some insight in the upcoming session, as well as enhancing our understanding of the key legislative issues and our understanding of what the leadership's positions on these issues are. Allow me to first thank our sponsors of today's legislative breakfast, our government relations benefactors who sponsor all of the government relations activities throughout the year include AT&T Oklahoma, Chesapeake Energy Corporation, and Devon Energy Corporation. And our government relations sponsors include Cox Communications and OGE Energy Corporation. At this time, I'd like to invite today's signature sponsor, the Boeing Company, to make a few comments. Please welcome Steve Hendrickson to the podium.
Thank you, Pete. If I had been given this opportunity about 2 years ago, I would have welcomed you on behalf of the 600 Boeing employees in Oklahoma City. This morning, it's my honor to welcome you on behalf of the 1,300 Boeing employees in Oklahoma City. With another 700 to go this year. So we're busy. 3 thank yous to offer. Number 1, to the Boeing employees that have been in this state and in Oklahoma City since the 1950s for creating the environment that allowed us to do this expansion. So thank you to them. Number 2, to our elected officials, all the legislators in the room today who had the wisdom and foresight to create programs like 21st Century Quality Jobs, Prime Win, and the Oklahoma Aerospace Engineering Tax Credit. Don't think for 1 minute that your work on those issues has significantly increased the value of the employment in this state and in the competitiveness in Oklahoma as we go through our processes. So thank you to the legislators. And finally, to the City of Oklahoma City and the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber. The City of Oklahoma City has just been so warm and welcoming to us. The Strategic Investment Program is another significant contributing factor to our success here, and especially I cannot imagine a deeper partnership than with the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, who has been with us every step of the way and helped welcome our employees to the state. So thank you all. We look forward to hearing our legislators' remarks. Thanks.
We're going to start off by recognizing all our elected or appointed city, county, state, and federal officials, or anybody of any other relevant political subdivision who is with us today. And believe it or not, we're going to ask all the public servants, our public servants and leaders, to stand. And our very own Derek is going to walk around with a microphone and ask you to introduce yourself. But please keep your speech at a minimum or we'll never get to our legislative panel. So if you could stand up, please, all of our elected or appointed officials. Please stand. Tom. So I think we're starting on the far right side.
Yeah, Tom Ivester, District 26, Western Oklahoma. I'm here to support Oklahoma City any way I can.
Bob Anthony, Corporation Commissioner.
Dana Murphy, Corporation Commissioner.
Jonna Kirshner, Executive Director, Oklahoma Department of Commerce.
David Holt, Senator from Northwest Oklahoma City.
Gary Scher, Secretary of the Environment.
Mark Costello, Commissioner of Labor.
Representative Jason Nelson from Northwest Oklahoma City.
Gary Mars, Oklahoma City Council, Ward 1.
Jim Huff, Metro Career Technology Centers. I'm from Southside Oklahoma City, District 7.
Skip Kelly, Oklahoma City Council, Ward 7.
Tom Newell, House District 28, Seminole and Potawatomi County.
Good morning. I'm Mike Ming, the Secretary of Energy.
Larry McAtee, Oklahoma City Councilman, Ward 3.
Clark Jolly, Senate District 41, Edmond, Oklahoma City.
T.W. Shannon, servant of the people.
Right. Scott Inman, State Representative from Del City and South Oklahoma City.
Tom Cole, servant of T.W. Shannon.
Mike Shelton, House District 97.
Brian Bingman, State Senator for Sapulpa.
Sean Burridge, State Senator, Rogers and Mays counties.
Good morning. Meg Salyer, City of Oklahoma City, Ward 6.
James Langford, U.S. Congress, District 5.
Colby Schwartz, House District 43, Yukon.
No filibustering. Richard Morissette, House District 92, South Oklahoma City.
Dave Lopez, Secretary of Commerce.
Lewis Moore, House District 96, Northeast Oklahoma County.
Good morning. Tim Rhodes, Oklahoma County Court Clerk.
Elise Hall, House District 100, Northwest Oklahoma City.
Willa Johnson, County Commissioner, Oklahoma County, District 1.
Brian Munn, Oklahoma County Commissioner, District 2.
John Eccles, Representative, House District 90, West Oklahoma City.
Kyle Lovelace, Freshman Senator, Mustang, South Oklahoma City, the thriving community of Valley Brook, and the Native American Cultural Center.
Charlie Joyner, Midwest City, and parts of Southeast Oklahoma City, House District 95.
Ray Vaughn, Oklahoma County Commissioner, District 3.
Gary Bands, House District 101, East Midwest City, Nakoma Park, Choctaw, and Ward 4 of Oklahoma City.
David Prater, Oklahoma County DA.
Kay Floyd, House of Representatives, District 88, Midtown, Oklahoma City.
Mike Turner, House District 82, far northwest part of Oklahoma City.
Gary Jones, State Auditor and Inspector.
I was going to say last but not least, Rob Standridge, State Senate, Cleveland, Oklahoma counties.
Ed Shadid, City of Oklahoma City, Ward 2.
Well, thank you for your attendance this morning, and thank you for your leadership. During the 2012 legislative session, a number of key chamber priorities were addressed. And I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to Governor Fallon and members of our legislature for their good work last session on these issues. Issues the business community believes are critical to our continued economic development. And at this time, I'd like to mention a few of those successes. The Chamber supported legislation to place State Question 766 on the November 2012 ballot. State Question 766 was exempted intangible personal property from the state's ad valorem tax, provided Oklahomans an opportunity to avert the largest single tax increase in state history. We further worked hard to secure passage of State Question 766. Our Chamber is strongly committed to protecting key business incentives and economic programs we believe to be essential to our ability to recruit companies, such as Boeing, to the greater Oklahoma City area and to expand our existing companies. During the 2012 session, all of the state's economic development programs the Chamber identified as critical were kept in place. 2012 was also a landmark year for transportation. This type of infrastructure is a very important element in our region, which is, of course, as you know, at the crossroads of two major interstates and at the dead center of the country. The Chamber strongly supports maintaining all funding levels for transportation with a historic number of Oklahoma City area projects included in ODOT's 8-year work plan. And as an earlier supporter of Governor Fallon's bridge improvement and turnpike modernization plan, we applaud the fact that Oklahoma now plans on repairing and replacing all 700 of the state's structurally deficient bridges by the end of this decade. A reliable transportation system is vital to economic development. The Chamber also took the lead in passing legislation to promote continued growth in Bricktown by allowing a college or university located within a business improvement district to waive the state law which prevented the Able Commission from granting mixed beverage licenses to new establishments wanting to locate in Bricktown. Support of our arts and social services organizations is also important to our community, and the Chamber was instrumental in providing the passage of legislation to provide the continuation of payroll deduction programs that allow state employees to make more than $600,000 in contributions to our state's charitable organizations. We continue to support efforts on educational reform. Last year's efforts included the protection of the curriculum and graduation requirements for Oklahoma students. The Chamber also supported the efforts to fund incentive payments to the National Board Certified Teachers, which had previously been suspended. Much work remains. High-quality education for all students in the region is probably the most critical element to our long-term economic viability. The Chamber will devote a lot of energy to moving reforms forward. A component of the Chamber's effort to strengthen the voice of Oklahoma City business community is our Political Action Committee, and during the 2012 election cycle, our PAC made more than $80,000 in contributions to 61 candidates, 55 of whom were either elected or re-elected to office. We're delighted by the growth we've seen in the PAC over the last few years, certainly indicating to us the business community is willingness to support candidates who advance the interests of Oklahoma City businesses. For those of you who may be interested in contributing to the Greater Oklahoma City PAC, there's more information at your table. While 2012 saw significant progress in a variety of business issues, we all know much work remains, and we have many things going well for us today: a low unemployment rate, growth in per capita income, a low cost of living, a relatively stable fiscal situation, very low electric rates. Sometimes I can't help myself on that one. But in other areas, we are behind. And we know what they are: education, the health of our citizens, and in terms of doing business, some of the highest workman compensation costs, with injured workers actually getting less than other states. We must continue to send a clear message that Oklahoma is committed to be one of the best business environments in the nation. Only by working together, we will be able to carry this momentum into the future. The Chamber remains eager to work with all of you to seize the opportunities before us to position Oklahoma City for long-term prosperity. I would now like to introduce David Rainbolt, CEO of BankFirst Corporation and Vice Chair of Government Relations for the Chamber. He will moderate our legislative panel discussion today. Let's welcome David.
Thanks, Pete, and thank you all for being here. I think it's extraordinarily important for our elected officials to see the passion that the business community has to make Oklahoma the most desirable environment for conducting business and hiring people in the country. Before we get started with our panel, you'll find in front of you a copy of the Chamber's legislative guide, and I'll touch very, very briefly on a couple of items. Pete alluded to workers' comp. It's our #1 issue this year. The metric is that Oklahoma is the 6th worst in the country. We've attempted many incremental changes to the workers' comp system over the years, and lest we be perceived as pointing fingers at others for these attempts at incremental improvement, let me tell you, the chamber was right there with every one of them. And it just hadn't worked out to make the metamorphic change that we believe is necessary. If we're the sixth worst in the country, one of only four, arguably, depends on your definition, but one of only four with a judicial system and an adversarial system like we've got, I think you've got to look at that and realize that maybe it's time to make a fundamental change and take a look at an administrative system. We'll talk about that with our panelists. In addition, we want to protect a few key economic development incentives. We understand full well that there's conflict when you're asking for state tax decreases and maybe shrinking the size of government to turn around and say we want to keep economic development incentives. We understand there are some that probably need to go, but we're very passionate and believe very firmly in a list of them, and we will be talking with the elected officials about those particular ones that we think there is an ROI for the state on and that deserve to stay. There's a list of other things, OCAST, but specifically within OCAST, the I2E programs we think are very effective. Try to catch back up here. Let's move on to our panelists. If our panelists would start making their way up. I will introduce each of them, and if you would hold your applause until I introduce them, and we'll recognize them individually. Most of you all have been here before and know what our process is. We'll ask a series of questions and kind of serpentine through the group and let each of them take a turn at going first and last. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to address the question, and then at the end of it all, we'll have a 2-minute wrap-up where they can talk to you all about whatever they want to in regard to the upcoming session. For our panelists, Mark Van Landingham is right there. He will raise his hand at the 1 minute and 30-second mark, so you know you've got 30 seconds to wrap it up if you are so inclined. All right, on my right, Senator Brian Bingman was born in Tulsa, holds a BBA in Petroleum Land Management from OU, currently is the VP of Land Operations for Uplands Resources. He was mayor of Sapulpa from 1992 to 2004, elected to the House in 2004, elected to the Senate in 2006, and if you would, please welcome President Pro Tempore of our Oklahoma State Senate, Brian Bingman. And staying with the Senate, on my far left, your right, is Senator Sean Burridge. He was born in Durant, now lives in Claremore with his family. He earned his bachelor's degree at OU and his JD from OU. He was legislative director for Senator David Boren, and in November of 2011, he was elected the Senate Democratic leader. Senator Sean Burridge. Representative T.W. Shannon, 6th generation Oklahoman, 3rd generation Lawtonian, enrolled member of the Chickasaw Nation. He got his bachelor's degree at Cameron and his JD from OCU. He's a former congressional staffer with both J.C. Watts and Congressman Tom Cole. It sounds like, is he not your boss anymore?
He still is.
Okay, all right, okay. Representative Shannon was elected Speaker of the House just recently. Please welcome Speaker Shannon. Representative Scott Inman, elected first to the House in 2006. He's on his 3rd term. He was raised in Del City, attended OU, for both his undergrad in political science and his JD. He was elected the leader of the House Democratic Caucus 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Scott Inman. Welcome, Scott Inman. We'll get to our questions now, but first I'd like to say, just kind of go afield here for a second. We've had an ever-improving quality of leadership in our legislature, but I would guess that we've never had a better cumulative group from left to right, from top to bottom, than the ones you see before you in terms of aptitude, integrity, and within their philosophical context, pragmatism as well. So I think I would say to all of you all, from all of us, we're proud that you all occupy your positions and glad that you're here to talk to us today. Our first question, and let's just start over here so I can keep up with who goes first and last, with Senator Burridge. Oklahoma companies pay the 6th highest workers' comp premiums in the country, according to the Oregon Department of Commerce. Our chamber believes this is the biggest economic development obstacle now facing the state. What reforms to our workers' comp system do you believe are necessary, if any, to make Oklahoma competitive in this area? Senator Burridge.
Thanks, David. Well, first I want to say, just because I'm a Democrat and I'm a lawyer doesn't mean I'm a workers' comp attorney. I've been to workers' comp court once since when I got my ass sued. That being said, 6th highest rates in the United States is way too high. We've been looking at this. I've said this is workers' comp reform 3.0 or 4.0 since I've been here. You know, what we have here is a system that was built to actually limit liability for companies. So when there's an accident, somebody gets hurt, there's a cap on what the injured worker gets. It's grown into a system in which lots of people are making lots of money. Historically, we thought it was claimants and attorneys. Maybe that's still the case. But what we've learned in the last 3 or 4 years is that doctors and hospitals are making a lot of money too. In fact, they're making a multiple of what they would make on a normal insurance claim and a workers' comp claim. And that has been the real stumbling block in bringing the cost down, in my opinion. I commend the work of those who've worked on it, and particularly Secretary of State Glenn Coffey. But there's more work to do, and I'm open to suggestions. There's been working groups that have looked at this issue in the interim. I've not been invited to them. I've not seen any language. So for me to comment on any of the proposals would be tough because I haven't been included. But I look forward to seeing what comes forward.
Why don't we just bounce back and philosophical? That's great. And I'll get lost as you guys keep up with everything. Senator Bingman.
Thank you. Thank you, David, and thank you all for being here today. This is a great crowd, and I think it's proof that Oklahoma is open for business. I think the numbers in this room grow every year. It's kind of disturbing on the national level when you see our GDP is actually decreasing, but I think you look at Oklahoma and things are on the uptick, doing well. So I think we're doing a lot of good things on the state level. When you talk about workers' comp, you know, the governor's business survey that she did last year, the #1 deterrent to businesses in Oklahoma, again, is the workers' comp system. And when you look at our surrounding states and how their workers' compensation system works, Oklahoma is, again, a very adversarial system. I think someone mentioned there's only 4, I think maybe 2 judicial systems left in the country. So I think most countries have made that change to an administrative system, and that's what we're going to be proposing this year, is to go ahead and make the leap and move Oklahoma to an administrative system and do what's right for workers and do what's right for employers, and try to, you know, the whole purpose of the system, somebody gets hurt on the job, you want to make sure they get medical attention immediately, and then you want to get them the necessary medical attention that they need, but you want to get them back to work as soon as possible. And the system that we have today, you know, the incentive is to delay. And so we have cases that just keep on going on. And as you all know, you all pay the premiums, but that just adds to the cost, adds, you know, medical costs, legal fees, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure that we are doing everything on the state level to make sure that Oklahoma is competitive. And, you know, as a business, a small business in Oklahoma, I've heard from many, many companies that really is their number one deterrent in their business is the high rates that they're paying. I've got a state senator from Poto who does business in Arkansas and Oklahoma. His rates in Oklahoma are twice what they are in Arkansas. So we want to change that this year, and I think we can do it. Thank you.
On behalf of the House Democratic Caucus, I want to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to be here. This is really, it's a special time for me. It's a special time for our members. When you only got 29 of you, or 12 as Senator Burridge has, a lot of folks don't come to you and ask your opinion because they don't think it really matters. But I guess in this sense, I promise you it does, and I'll tell you why as we go throughout this morning. In one particular instance, when it comes to workers' compensation reform, my caucus fundamentally believes that the system isn't where it needs to be. We see the numbers. We know workers' compensation rates are too expensive for our employers. And that's why a year and a half ago, the vast majority of my caucus stood with Governor Fallon, stood with you, and voted for, at the time was heralded as the greatest workers' compensation package in state history. The governor said it, said we fixed the problem, we're there. We supported that. And then about 8 months later, we start talking about opt-out, and now we're talking about an administrative system, and our guys are sort of confused. Because for years we've been the ones assailed as anti-workers' comp reform. Finally, I guess you could say from your perspective, we come around to the table and say, fine, we'll work with you. So we do, we pass reform, and then 8 months later it's, well, forget that, we're going to do something completely different. We struggle with that, and here's why. Because our basic understanding of the workers' compensation system is this, that if you're going to pass any reforms, you've got to give it a number of years before those reforms materialize into lower rates. Those of you who pay workers' compensation rates know that when your actuary comes and sits down and looks at your books and looks at how much you're paying in terms of claims, they look at this year and then they go back 3 or 4 years, and that's how they calculate your rates. Well, if we passed, there are certain parts of the workers' compensation package that were passed a year and a half ago that are just now taking effect. And if it just now takes effect, we're looking at a minimum of a 3 to 4 year period before those changes can really take effect, and you will see the changes in your workers' compensation rates. So our position is we want to invest and wait and see what happens with those reforms, because we believe, like you did, that they were important. And we also want to work on controlling the out of control medical care costs. And we think if we put a package together this year in that vein, that's the best approach. We're concerned about what an administrative system looks like, not that they don't necessarily work, but we also understand that a workers' compensation claim may take, on average, takes 3 years to see it through to completion, and then it could be 10 years down the road from there, and somebody could open it back up because of a new medical discovery. Well, if that happens, that case has to go back before that judicial system. And so what we're talking about now is if we pass an admin system today, you're going to essentially have to run 2 competing parallel workers' compensation systems for potentially a decade or longer. That's expensive at a time that we don't really have a lot of money, and so we are cautious as we approach that issue this year.
First of all, thank you and good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you and also to share kind of our thoughts about the House. We will be unveiling at 11:30 today our caucus agenda, which I think you'll be very proud of. It's a very pro-growth, pro-business approach. As far as workers' compensation, I believe that all options should be on the table, whether we're talking administrative system, opt-out, whatever, because the truth of the matter is we have had workers' compensation reform in the past, but we have not lowered rates. And so we have to have quantifiable evidence that the reforms that we're making are going to lower rates. And I think that there is proven evidence that administrative system, there's a good measure from the NCCI that will, I think, also add to the fact that we have an opportunity in Oklahoma to lower those rates by moving to either administrative system or looking at an opt-out provisions, and we can't wait. I don't think that we have the opportunity to wait on it. I think we've got to move quickly because, again, we've got states that we're competing with, and we're competing not just in the country, but we're competing worldwide. So we've got to move quickly on workers' compensation reform, and I certainly think an administrative system will provide those options.
Thank you. Second question, in deciding not to expand Medicaid in Oklahoma under federal health care law, Governor Fallon stated her preference to instead develop an Oklahoma plan. What is your vision for an Oklahoma plan, And what role will the state legislature play in the process? Senator Manning.
When we talk about Medicaid, it's, that is a difficult subject. Oklahomans, we are, everybody's compassionate and, wants to extend help where they can, but I think, I support Governor Fallon. I know everyone won't agree, but I do support her decision not to accept the Medicaid dollars at this time. I think we have a crisis in this country, and as much as we'd like to see people insured in Oklahoma, we've got to come up with our own plan, because I have people coming up to me and say, well, I want my tax dollars, to go for the Medicaid expansion, but again, our tax dollars are eaten up about the first 6 months in Washington. If they're spending $4 trillion a year and we're only sending $2 trillion up there in our tax money, then, how can we be expanding the Medicaid? There's no way to pay for it. So I think, we've got some real challenges ahead of us, and I think Oklahoma, we have a $6.8 billion budget. We probably has as much on the appropriated end coming in from federal dollars that never go through the legislature. So we need to start preparing ourselves for when those dollars aren't going to be coming to Oklahoma. And, certainly that's, if we, on the Medicaid dollars, we want to look maybe expanding the Insure Oklahoma that we have that's been successful. And I know the governor's been, kind of has a task force working on ideas, but we've got to learn how to settle these problems in Oklahoma and not rely on the federal government to send money that they don't have to our state.
I totally disagree. If we don't like federal dollars, we don't like Medicaid dollars, why don't we send back the $2.5 to $3 billion we already take every year? This decision not to expand Medicaid was a political decision. It's a political decision based upon, I guess, the connotation that this would be Obamacare money. We have an opportunity here to insure 180,000 people that don't have health insurance now. These aren't people that aren't working. These are the working poor. These are people that need insurance. Medicaid already is the backbone of our rural health care system. Go look at the numbers. It's there. Medicaid's also a very efficient way to deliver health care. Their administrative costs are like 1% versus insurance companies that were much higher than that. This is a missed opportunity for the state of Oklahoma. It's disingenuous to say we don't want this amount of money when we're taking 10 times that already for the same purpose. We need to do this for the state of Oklahoma. We need to do this for the people of Oklahoma and those who most need it. And by the way, along the way, our hospitals and our doctors are going to do well too, because these people are going to be going through the system, having a primary care physician versus showing up in the emergency room, costing all of us more money. Thank you.
We absolutely cannot wait for the federal government to lead, whether we're talking about health care or education. I think the federal government's proven it's either incapable or unwilling to make the necessary decisions to reform the country. If there's going to be reform, it's going to happen at the state level. The federal government's $16 trillion in debt right now. If we believe for 1 minute that they were going to be able to keep their commitment to completely fund the requirements of Obamacare, we're fooling ourselves. So I think Governor Fallon absolutely made the right decision in rejecting to expand Medicaid. Look, we can't define compassion by the number of people that we put on Medicaid. We should be defining it by the number of people we get off of it. And I think we've got a real opportunity in Oklahoma to show that to the rest of the nation. So, and where we've got to focus really is access to care in our rural areas and increasing the number of physicians that we have, primary care physicians in both our rural and urban areas. That's one place that I think the state can start, because we've got a crisis right here, and also focusing not just on health care, but on health. We have some really terrible health indicators in Oklahoma, and that's a place where I think we can start here at the state level as well.
For our caucus, it's about the math. The math is pretty simple. We fundamentally believe that you can't stand in one position that the governor takes and says that if we cut income taxes to zero, or cut income taxes by 1/4% or 0.5% or whatever it is, that by putting that $120 million or $500 million or $1 billion back into the economy, that you're going to turn around and see that growth revenue come back. If you take that position, if you believe in that supply side theory of economics, you cannot likewise take the position that putting $3.6 billion into directly, not just into the hands of people who could spend it in Dallas or spend it in DC or wherever. This is $3.6 billion directly into one of the largest economic engines in the state of Oklahoma, the healthcare industry, that it likewise will not have a subsequent trickle-down effect. Our belief is, if you look at the $600 million of uncompensated care that our hospitals around the state are drowning in annually, you have to solve that problem. Rural Oklahoma, those folks need access to good quality medical care. They cannot get it under the current environment because many of those hospitals and doctors are on the brink of shutting down and moving to the city. And those of us from Oklahoma City or Lawton or Tulsa, we're okay. We're not worried about our constituents having access to good health care, but everybody else is. My caucus, vastly made up of rural members, they're worried about it. And we're looking at $600 million of uncompensated care, $3.6 billion that is going to be spent. It's not a matter of waiting for the federal government to lead. They've already done it. The money's going. And it's a matter of whether we're going to accept the money or let it go to Arizona. And I promise you this, there's nobody in the country more opposed to the President of the United States than Jan Brewer. And if it is good enough for Jan Brewer, by God, it's good enough for Oklahoma.
Okay. Last year, reducing Oklahoma's personal income tax was a central focus of legislative efforts. However, everybody was unable to agree on tax reform, a tax reform package, and nothing was enacted. What sort of state income tax reform will you support during the upcoming session, Mr. Speaker?
Well, first of all, I think we need to be committed to allowing Oklahomans, hardworking Oklahomans, to keep more of their income. As you know, we have lowered the income rate over the last decade from about 7.5% to 5.25%, and I think that's something we can be proud of. But we've got to continue the momentum. You know, our forefathers, our founding fathers of this country, designed the system so that we would compete with other states. And right now, the surrounding states around us have lower income tax rates than we do. So we've got to remain competitive. And I'm very excited that, you know, the conversations that I've had with the leadership in both the Senate as well as the governor's office, there's still that commitment to do it. How we pay for it, we will certainly get there, but I don't think we need to stop with income tax. I think we also need to be focused on our franchise tax as well. If we can eliminate the franchise tax, I think we will have a real opportunity to say to the rest of the nation that Oklahoma is truly open for business, and we're also working to reduce our income tax rate, and I think we can get there because I know that there's the will in the House to do it.
For us, again, our theme this year is it's all about the math. We'll go back to the math again. We're looking at $170 million, maybe $200 million worth of growth revenue this year, maybe, if we're lucky. 1/4% drop in the state's top tax bracket will cost us $120 to $125 million, just like that. So if we pass a tax cut this year, 1/4%, which by the way, we did that already. That already came into effect about 1.5 years ago. But if we do it again this year, what little growth revenue we have is essentially gone. And so we take that position, and you look at what the governor's already laid out, positions that we bipartisanly support. She just laid out just a few days ago $56 million new dollars that she wants to spend on Medicaid for the woodwork effect, as well as mental health. We fundamentally believe that money needs to be spent there. So that's $56 million. The superintendent of public schools, who in our opinion is no great friend to public schools. I mean, that's just the Democratic position. She said just 2 days ago, she called for $300 million new dollars to the public school system. That's not a Democrat, a liberal, Sandy Garrett, or whomever saying we need more money for public schools, we're just going to grow public schools. This is the most conservative superintendent in state history saying public schools need $300 million next year. So we're at $56 million for Medicaid and health care, or mental health. We're at $300 million for public schools. We haven't gotten into the 8-year roads and bridges plan, which we support. We haven't gotten into the fact that Jeff Hickman from Tacoma was fundamentally right when he says our Department of Corrections is at a life or death situation in staffing needs. There are real legitimate needs that have to be met, on top of $180 million worth of bond proposals that have been thrown out there to fix the Capitol and capital projects. There are over $1 billion worth of absolute needs that I think are bipartisanly supported. You can't, in our own private lives, you can't say our foundation of the house needs to be fixed. Let's reduce our revenue and let's go fix the foundation on a credit card. We cannot, at this time, fundamentally, we don't believe, can afford to reduce our tax basis because there are too many needs that have to be met. And this comes from a party who had a governor a few years ago that passed the largest tax cut in state history. What we have to understand is when that tax cut went into effect, we had over $1 billion worth of surplus, and needs were met. We don't have those needs met now, and we certainly don't have $1 billion worth of surplus. And so our position is we want to make sure tax rates are fair, but we also want to make sure we fund our infrastructure, our schools, our roads and bridges, because you all who have businesses here, you care about taxes, but you also care a whole lot about all those other programs, and we want to make sure that the proper investments are made there.
I think we want to be responsible, and I think we've been responsible in the past when we talk about tax cuts. You look at states like Illinois, look at California. They've ballooned their budgets, and they balance their budgets by raising their state income tax. You know, we welcome these people who paying those high income tax rates come to Oklahoma. If you look at the numbers, when Oklahoma reduced their state income tax from 5.5 to 5.25, our state income tax revenues were greater for the year when they were 5.25 than they were at 5.5. So it's not just like $120 million disappears. That's money that goes back into the pockets of Oklahomans that they can use to purchase whatever they need, whatever's good for their families. You know, nationwide, we're all, you know, if you got your paycheck this last month and there's a 2% increase, that's going to really hurt people in Oklahoma. If we pursue a reduction in the state income tax, that can help fill that void that they're feeling right now. We will continue to look at, you know, some of the tax credits and look at tax reform. We spent 4 months last session working on that. It's a difficult topic, and there's a lot of tax credits out there, but I think it's incumbent upon the legislature to look at all of them, make sure that they are performing when they were set up, and make sure that they're performing at creating jobs and benefiting Oklahoma. And we will continue with that. So I would fully expect to see some sort of tax reduction package this year. We don't know exactly what that will be, but again, we've over the last couple of years, we've filled up our rainy day fund again, and we've done that with modest, responsible tax cuts along the way, and I would anticipate that to continue.
Any debate about tax reform in the state of Oklahoma needs to be at a minimum revenue neutral. As Senator Representative Inman said,
don't insult me like that again, please.
They have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder in the lower chamber. But anyway, it has to be revenue neutral. Tomorrow night, I'll be in Claremore, Oklahoma at the Stuart Rusa Elementary School at a fundraiser called Beach Blanket Bingo for the local school. And we're not raising money for smart boards or a new computer lab. We're raising money for basic supplies for that school to have. Got a phone call from the principal, robocall last Sunday night. I listened to it. The tutoring program that we had at that grade school has been ended because they're out of money. If you take the $200 million that we think we may have this year to spend and put it all in public education, you get to 2009 levels. It's all about the math. We've got to be responsible. We've got to take care of people. We've got to provide good public education, and any reduction in revenue right now is not prudent.
To make up a little time here, I'm going to ask a question, and if you would, just say yes or no. I won't count this as your lead-off question.
All right.
But get ready, because you're leading off.
You're right.
Okay, several bills have been filed that would allow principals, teachers, and others to carry guns at schools, including kindergarten, elementary, and high schools. Do you believe allowing more guns on campus is a reasonable way to address school safety concerns?
Thanks.
Just trying to make up some time.
Investing in school resource officers, that way maybe. Just arming everyone, that's not where our caucus necessarily is, no.
I'll just say what's good for SPALPA may not be right for somebody in the Panhandle. So I think every school district is different, and really decisions like that need to be made more on a local level. What's good for their school, what kind of relationship they have with their public safety, police, sheriff, whatever in that particular area.
No.
Well done.
I believe in the Second Amendment, and I believe in local control.
Thank you, and that gets us a little closer to being on time here. This is important to the chamber. I want to spend a little time on this one, and I'll tell you what, why don't we make this the last question, and then you all will have a 2-minute wrap-up to talk about the session or whatever you wish. The state of Oklahoma's economic and community development programs have received significant scrutiny from the legislature in recent years. What is your perspective on retaining programs such as the Historical Building Rehabilitation Tax Credit and the Investment New Jobs Tax Credits specifically, or any others you want to talk about, Senator?
Me?
Is it your? No, back to you.
Back to me. Okay.
Was it you? Oh yeah, that's right. Didn't count.
That's all right.
Didn't count.
That's right. Thanks. You give me guns, yes or no? Thanks. Our caucus absolutely believes in, especially the two that you mentioned. We fundamentally support them, and we think, although we would, and I've said this before at the State Chamber event, we are pretty much in alignment with Senator Coburn in the sense that we wish that we lived in an environment in which we didn't have to have these economic incentives and everybody just played on a level playing field state to state, but that's not the way it is. And so I promise you, you won't see calls from the House Democratic Caucus that will hamstring the business and the state, and the business community as well as state leaders from being as competitive as possible to continue to not only keep your business in the state, but also to try to attract others.
For me, it's real simple. Does it generate legitimate economic activity? That's the measurement that we should be using for each tax credit. Take them on a one-by-one basis and see if it's actually producing and returning on that investment. If we're seeing a return on that investment, that's the question for any tax credit. In a perfect world, maybe we'd like to see where there wouldn't be tax credits, but again, we're competing with other states that have them, and we have to be competitive.
Be very quick. Those are examples of some good tax credits. There's good ones, which I think meet the definition that Speaker Shannon just said. Do they provide economic development? And there's bad ones. So I have no problem with those.
Certainly, if it helps the business, I would support those. I have been a very strong supporter of the historic tax credit. I see the benefits, what that does to some, even your smaller communities around Oklahoma. You've got a lot of older buildings that, it's probably more efficient, more cost savings to go out and build a new building, but anytime you can save and maintain the historical perspective of some of the older buildings in the state, I think in the long run we're definitely much better off, and certainly the Mayo in Tulsa and the Skirvin in Oklahoma City are great examples of what the historic tax credit can do for Oklahoma.
All right, well, if you would now, each of you are welcome to give us a 2-minute summation or observation on the upcoming session, what your goals or concerns might be, and why don't we just go back to the first rotation, Senator, if you believe.
Oh, thanks, David. I want to thank you all for this opportunity. It's very rare that anybody really cares what I have to say these days. So I appreciate your time. No, in all seriousness, it's great for a guy that grew up in Antlers and now represents Claremore, gets to sit in front of this group, and it's an honor. I think you can see from we have some differences in our approach to things, but we all want one thing. We want a better Oklahoma. We want a place that's more prosperous, where our kids want to go to school here and live here for the rest of their lives. That's all what we want. And this isn't Washington, D.C. I like everybody on this panel very, very much. I consider them personal friends, and we're all working towards the same things. And I really appreciate being here today.
You know, I'm just going to kind of climb on Senator Burge here, but you know, it is refreshing that you know, we've got 48 senators, and we all work well together, and we socialize together, and I think that's good for Oklahoma, and do the same thing in the House. I wish you know, maybe a little more of that camaraderie was more prevalent in Washington, D.C. today, and we might get more done. But I think looking forward to this session, one thing we really haven't focused on, again, is education. I think we all realize the need for more dollars in the classroom, and over the last couple of years, we've concentrated on reforms in our education system, and I think you'll see also a strong push out of our caucus for putting more dollars in the classroom and make sure the reforms that we have passed, that we are doing everything possible to make sure that they are successful, because we all realize the need you all have for college graduates, high school graduates, people that with a good education, and trying to strengthen our workforce. So that's a commitment we'll make this year.
Likewise, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It really is an honor and a privilege, and I mean that. I also know that you, like me, have been reading the newspapers lately. You watch television, you're seeing all of these bills that have been filed, and usually if they've made it to the newspaper and to television, that's not good. So on behalf of my colleagues, I'm sorry. I apologize for what we're doing out there. Sometimes I feel like, what is it, the Ozzy Osbourne song, right? Crazy Train. I feel like we're on the crazy train sometimes. I can tell you this, just in my almost 7 years at the state capitol, those of you who look at all the things, whether we're going to end the Arts Council, or we're going to arm all people, or we're going to do all kinds of other interesting things, usually, I think there's a correlation I've discovered, that the more press and publicity a bill gets before session begins, the greater likelihood that it will never see the light of day in May. That's the facts, right? So don't worry, you will be all right. But on behalf of our caucus, I can tell you this: we are a unified bunch. We've got 29 incredible men and women from a diverse background: Oklahoma City, Tulsa, rural, urban, from a variety of professions, and we are unified. We're on the same page. I have the privilege that a lot of leaders prior to me don't have. I get to walk into the room, and even though they may have differences of opinion, we come together and we unite and say, if we think this is what's best for the state of Oklahoma, we'll walk out there as a unified group and vote that way. And so I tell you that to say this. Last session, even though we only had 31 members, we were effective. In select targeted areas, we were very effective, and we will be that way again. Because anytime you have 72 members in the House of Representatives, it is very difficult. Ask Speaker Benson and Adair and Glenn Johnson and all those folks before. It is very difficult to herd those cats and say, even get to 51 with those 72. And I know, despite the fact that TW is an incredible leader and he's a great friend, he'll have his challenges. And what I've told TW is this year, if you get those sensible, common sense measures that we think are good for education and transportation, health care, moving Oklahoma forward, you will find a willing participant in my 29 members that even if you only got 40 or 45 and you got to get to 51, we'll help you get to 51, because at the end of the day, we all got to live together and hopefully cast off the fringe elements of both sides of the aisle and move the state forward. And that's my commitment from the House Democratic Caucus for the 2013 session. Thank you very much.
Just in closing, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning, but also thank you to the Oklahoma City business community. You have been an inspiration, not just to other cities in the state, but to other cities around the nation because of what you've done by reinvesting in yourselves and the pro-growth attitude that you've had. And so thank you. I recognize that in order to have a strong Oklahoma, we must have a strong Oklahoma City, a strong Tulsa, and a strong rural area. And you guys have set a standard for the rest of the state. And I will tell you, moving forward, I try to keep three things in mind, the things that I heard when I was knocking doors back in 2006 when I was first elected. They told me three things. They said, fix the roads, fix the schools, and leave us alone. That's what I heard around the most. And I think I still hear that today coming from the business community, that if you will allow us to hire the people we want to hire, if you will keep your regulations low, if you will trust us with our own money, we can make the right decisions that will help spear our economy so that we have the money to reinvest in education, to reinvest and infrastructure. So thank you for what you're doing on employing people. And I will tell you, Scott Inman and I, we've had several conversations leading up to this session, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us to work together. In areas when we can't work together, I think he recognizes he's wrong. And so I just want to say I do appreciate the opportunity to serve with these fine gentlemen, and I think we're going to have a great session for 2013.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here and good luck in the new session. And if you all would, please welcome back to the podium your chairman of the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, Pete Delaney.
That was a great discussion. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, legislators, and thank you, sponsors. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd like to let all the legislators know that if there's any way that the chamber staff can help you on any of the issues, please contact our government relations team. They stand ready, regardless of the political party, to help you. And members, likewise, get engaged. We have email alerts that will allow you to track. We'll let you know what's going on at the legislature, and you know, call them. You know, get in touch with your legislator and know what your concerns are. I know they would appreciate it very much. And lastly, just want to remind you, February 12th, school board elections. In terms of getting engaged, it's an important election. Please get out and vote. Thank you very much for attending. We are adjourned and have a very safe day. Thank you.